Welcome to Awakening and Relating.
I'm Kayla.
And I'm Brad.
Join us as we unpack deep awakenings, conscious relating, and further awakening through intimacy. We're back.
And we're going to be discussing how two partners in a conscious relationship can help each other awaken more deeply, regardless of where you are at as an individual in the process of your awakening. So,
yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. An example for me comes to mind of, I guess it's about six or 7 weeks ago. And I've had some deep awakening experiences over the last 8 years. But somehow the ego structure seems to up level with you, right? Mm-hmm. With your newfound awareness, with a new way to see yourself as the observer or move into that observation kind of state, if you will. But the ego structure grabs onto this stuff and it starts to once again project. And this is what happened to me. Even though we have a podcast and there's some other things that we're doing and we have an Instagram page, and you had asked me if I would help you with it. And my thing has always been, since the moment I awakened, I'm done with technology, right? I'm done with it. And so I started to once again draw a hard line in the sand. And I noticed for about 3 days, it was close to 3 days, I started suffering again. I woke up on like a Friday morning and was suffering. And when I say suffering, I mean that I woke up and I kind of felt angry. I felt agitated. I felt a little off balance, out of alignment, however you want to say it. But there was this undercurrent of like, this kind of angry vibe.
Just because I was asking you about social media?
Well, it was, so what really happened at the end of the day was this projection of this, it wasn't because you were asking me, it's because I was resisting. Mm-hmm. And so I remember telling you, like, that Friday morning when I woke up, I was like, hey, I feel kind of shitty today, a little pissy. Like, I hope if I get too, cranky or bitchy, like, please call me out, and both of us do a real good job of that. Right. Communicating where we're at and then allowing the other person to help. And so, it wasn't that you were asking me. It was that this new persona was coming online because you did ask me, hey, can you help me more with this? Can you lean into this? Can you, not only respond to comments, but help with like reels and shorts. And I remember saying something to the effect of, I will never, ever do that. I will never do that again. It's like, it's a fake way of communicating. It's not real. It's not authentic.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that resistance started to cause the ego structure to expand in such a way that, so what it does is it first draws a hard line in the sand, right? It says, I will not do this, right? And so expectations are now at play, right? So I have expectations. I've already expressed these to you. So why does she expect me to do more? These are outside of the expectations that we've already discussed. And so I'm resisting this necessity to lean into this stuff, because if we are going to help people understand anything, writing a book and sticking it in a public library may work, but it's probably not the best outlet now with the technology that we have. So I was resisting the use of the technology. And I was doing that by getting grumpy and basically telling you, like, this is what I will and won't do. Mm-hmm. And from there, I was projecting this new persona into this world, this spiritual Brad that expects this, drew a hard line in the sand, will do these things, won't do these things. And if you ask me to do otherwise, you're going to upset me and this is going to be a problem. And so most of this goes on in your subconscious, but, you noticed it and, we talked about it and you didn't really say anything, which I think was great. And I think this is where the example comes in, is that you and I have we're at different paths on our awakening. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
So we're at different parts of the path, if you will. And so how we help each other is also different, right? So what you did that was so awesome was, after I was able to express that I'm going through something, I don't necessarily know what it is, you did a good job of just holding very neutral space for about 2.5 or 3 days. and you would just allow me to kind of go through it. We would communicate about what feelings I was having and how, how it was sitting, my emotions. But you weren't very suggestive on do this, do that, don't do this, right? Just very neutral and allowing me to go through it. And about the third day, about 2.5 days deep, I guess, I started to recognize, I was like, well, I'm not experiencing joy anymore. I keep reliving this kind of angsty feeling that doesn't feel real good. And I remember we were sitting in a car, and I started kind of just out loud saying, and you probably remember this. I was like, okay, so I seem like I feel stuck, right? That sensation of being stuck. I keep looping on these things, and I started to say, well, what you resist persists. And then I started to dig around. Well, what am I actually resisting? Like lately, what have I been resistant to? What am I not leaning into that's here already that I should just be leaning into? And at a certain point, I recognized, oh shit, I'm projecting a brand new persona in the world. It's just a new flavor of spiritual Brad. And that new flavor is resistant. And so if I right now lay down the resistance and just stop, and I told you, I was like, look, I'm going to lean into all of this as much as I can with the technical expertise that I have, which isn't much. I'm going to lean into, yeah, and it shows. Yeah. So I'm going to lean into all of it, and I'm going to have you help me where you can. And I'm going to be here for it,
Yeah. Well, and that was a lot of it too, is like, I just needed your help.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I was
like, take it over.
Like, I don't want to bring someone that's not on social media to be on social media. Cause like, I wish I could get out of it, but yeah. Like
you just needed help.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I will not do it. I was very firm on this is who I am. And that firmness, that stance, Ram Dass talks about this, like when there's no place left to stand, that's when you experience freedom. When you stop resisting the outside world and saying, this is my position on something. And I noticed that, and I remember talking it out in the car. And again, you were very neutral and very just, let me go through it. And as I recognized that I was resisting, and I started talking to you, and I said, well, this is what I'm going to do. I promise you right now that I'm going to lean into this as best I can with whatever technical expertise I have, which is much. And I'm not going to resist it, and I'm just going to be part of it with you as much as I can and wherever you need me to help. And instead of going through these kind of low vibe sensations and emotions, I'm just going to start experiencing joy. And poof, like literally poof, like smoke, it all was gone. And I immediately started experiencing joy again and back into this present moment, and started sinking again more deeply into awareness, as opposed to lost in the story of the mind as who I think I am and the projection of that. So,
And I also like really appreciate that you actually did too. Like it, because when you had said it to me, I was just kind of like in the patterns of like, oh, when someone says they're going to do something, like they mainly probably won't do it, well, especially in relationship.
Sure. Because you just say things.
Yeah. And so like I even had a little bit of that, like, okay, let's see what actually happens.
Sure.
Like,
but we'll see is an okay space to be in. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an okay space to be in. But
and then you have been.
Yeah.
Have been helping.
I answered a bunch of comments today. Unprovoked, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it works. And it differs based on where you're at in your awakening process as to kind of what is going to be the best approach. And so just so everybody knows where both Kayla and I are in our awakening journey, why don't you give them an idea of how you're awakening? I know we've talked about this before, but maybe somebody new to the channel, where's your awakening coming from? What depths have you been able to attain? Kind of, can you talk about that a little bit?
So mine is mainly 100% almost,
yeah.
Through the body, through movement, stillness, but all through the body as much as I can get out of my mind. Mm-hmm. Whereas yours is like mainly mind. Yeah. So we're opposites in that, in a way. Mm-hmm. And so I also am not anywhere near where you are, but in a way there's like no comparison.
Right. There isn't. I want to point out, don't get stuck on this regardless of where you're at on your journey. There's not a finish line, right? It's
Yeah.
not like I'm here and you're here and this is a better place to be. That's an incorrect statement. Yeah.
Like we are absolutely at very different levels, but we're really good about, or you're really good about not putting anything on me to be pressured to deepen into my own experiences. Like, of course you want that, but
sure,
it's not like you're pushing me to, or making me feel cornered because I'm not where you are. And
right.
so, yeah, and I absolutely say like, I'm not where you are.
It's just it's a
and
different.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's just a different space to be in. You know, like my awakening experience. Thank you, by the way.
But it's also because they're not comparable, and because they're two different methods. You certainly can't like compare them because it's two different ways as well.
It's definitely like, again, yours very much through the body. Like I've seen you do like expressive dance. I've seen like your body like on the ground, like gyrating, and like you can see the energy like coming through and unfolding. And it's very like, you know, it's very much a physical experience for you. My initial awakening and all subsequent awakenings have been, some of them have been energetic. You know, there's been, my first awakening had a lot of Kundalini vibes, and, you know, there's a lot of shaking and twitching and stuff like that. But for me, it's been a lot of contemplation work. So through the mind, trying to find ways to paint the mind into a corner so it loses its grip on what it calls itself, right? Or its reality. So yeah, we're at very different phases of our awakening, and the way we found the spaces that we're in came differently too. Yours came very much through feeling into the body, like even self-pleasure practices and things that bring you.
Sex and pleasure is primary.
Right, for you, right. And it's like almost tantra vibes, you know, being able to leverage the body as the doorway in. And mine has been quite the opposite, like using the mind and, you know, through that, the recognition of the body just being a vessel, you know, but you're using the vessel, right? I'm using the mind to point to that it's a vessel.
And it's really cool since we've been together, because like we're both intermixing with each other.
Yeah, that's a neat part. Yeah, because I'm starting to experience the ability to be present through the body versus being present and letting go of the body. So it's a different dynamic in how that feels. Yeah, you wind up in the same place.
Yeah, and you're helping me more with the mind.
Yeah,
in the moments.
Yeah, you wind up in that space of neutral conscious awareness, but you get there pretty drastically different. And I mean, using pleasure as the doorway is it's pretty amazing. I'll be honest. It's a nice way to get there.
It's so fun.
Yeah, it's so fun. Yeah, we're #blessed for sure. So
that was darky.
Okay. So yeah, you're a complete nerd, Brad. Okay. So yeah, we're blessed for sure. That being the case, you know, when you're in relationship with anyone, you got to be especially, so here's kind of the scenarios, right? So you're in relationship, both of you are asleep, one of you starts to awaken. That's kind of a challenging one, right? If you're the partner that's awakening, your asleep partner probably won't understand. If they love you deeply or they think they love you deeply, then they're going to give you some space, but it's not going to really necessarily be what you need. Right?
Yeah, right.
Because they don't really know what it means to hold neutral space, right? Things are going to come up and they're going to be like, what about these real world scenarios? And although those do exist, like you're not going to give a lot of weight to those, right? You're like, well, I want to go meditate. And they're like, well, you need to mow the lawn, right? And you're like, well, the lawn will wait. Like
it's very like contradicting.
It is
spaces.
Yeah, they are very contradictory spaces. Agreed. And that being the case, if you're the partner that's awakening, you also need to be very gentle with your partner, because for them, something kind of dramatic is happening. You know, for us, it's a little different because we both already had experienced some level of awakening before we dove into this together. But I was in a relationship before you and I got together, and I awakened in that relationship, and my partner did not. Mm-hmm. And for her, it was very challenging because it's watching the person that you were with fall apart, dissolve, go away. Although the form is still walking and talking and looking the same, the being that's coming through has nothing to do with the old character that used to think that it was real.
Yeah.
So it seems to be pretty traumatic for those that aren't on the awakening side of things.
Mm-hmm. Especially even like, that's even like the family, like,
yeah,
everybody that you know, your identity is.
Yeah, all of your family, right? Mm-hmm. And you experienced a little bit of that too, didn't you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. The family starts going, well, what's going on with you? Like, where's, you know, I've had friends actually say, what have you done with Brad? You know?
Yeah, and I actually had to just completely cut off from people.
Yeah, sometimes, and this is the part that doesn't feel good to say, but if you are awakening deeply in relationship, and your partner is not, nor do they have any interest in trying, the trajectory of the relationship, I don't want to say is doomed, because you can be gentle through the process. Ram Dass calls it like the yoga of, right? Like maybe you're married to somebody that drinks vodka every day, like heavily, you know? Can you further awaken in that relationship? Absolutely. Is it going to be more challenging? Absolutely.
Right. Because at that level, then you're approaching it from like, it's almost like a test, even though it's not, but it's like, how conditional is your love? And then once those things that you did together, or those pieces that once connected you and they're not there, is that love still there? And it also shows you how true the love is between. Mm-hmm. Can you move beyond these differences, and can you continue to deepen together on your path? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the challenge with that also is that the love that you experience when you're in relationship and in your ego structure is always conditioned, right? There is no unconditional love vibe in an egocentric relationship, because it's always, I will love you if. Mm-hmm. I love you if you love me back. I love you if you don't cheat on me. I love you if you continue to make a good living. You know, I love you if you cook me dinner, whatever, right? Whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. And that's where things start to fall away specifically.
Yeah. What no longer serves you starts to fall away. Mm-hmm. And again, I've run into this with a lot of friends. I experienced it myself, so I feel comfortable talking about it. But there is something that tends to get lost. You know, if you start to awaken at any level, and you choose to cling to your current relationship, even as it is clearly, the universe is clearly separating you, and you start to cling to it, you will once again start to suffer, and you will slow your awakening process due to that suffering. Or at least it will seem like you're slowing it, because you'll be back in a state of suffering, trying to patchwork something back together that was mostly illusory to begin with, right? It's relatively real, but it's two ego structures conditioning on why they'll stay together through the fiction of the mind. And so, again, you and I have a bit of a different scenario, because we both experienced levels of awakening prior. Mm-hmm. But many of the people I think listening to this are going to be in relationships where they are the ones awakening. I would say if somebody made it to this video and they are the one that's not awakening, I would be shocked, because why would you even be looking for this stuff online? You know, the person that's not awakening won't have an idea of what's happening. They won't recognize their partner as somebody that's having an awakening experience unless they've had one themselves. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important to just note that, you know, just be really gentle with yourself, and be gentle with those around you, your family, your partner, even your friends for that matter, because they're not going to understand it either. And to some extent, it makes a lot of sense to not share a lot of your awakening with your friends and family. Sometimes it feels so good because, again, if you've had a deep awakening experience, you recognize this sense of home.
Well, then it also kind of creates this unique phase of loneliness, because you're going through something that you know potentially that your partner isn't or may not be experiencing or understanding, and then so you're left like, who do you talk to in that time, and who do you share? Sometimes sharing with your partner can make them feel
it's more distant, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and they start feeling like they can't connect with you. And then you start experiencing this lack of connection, because as you awaken, you're yearning for a deeper connection. Like you're looking for something that's more than just the surface level. But your partner may not be equipped to give that to you, you know, and it's okay. You can certainly stay in that relationship. It will be challenging, right? But there is no wrong way to express or manifest or navigate life. There is no wrong way. So it's just what you choose to do. I would say that if the universe is clearly, you know, pulling you apart in such a way, and you feel like this intense clinging, I would suggest trying the let go approach. It'll still hurt, you know, because there's something there.
Right. Well, this is where it's, in a way, it can help catalyze. Yeah, it absolutely can help catalyze your growth.
Yes.
In that relationship, because everything that you may not be experiencing that is triggering you in those relationships, or if you're the opposite, everything that you are experiencing and more, and that your partner isn't, it's catalyzing your growth, their growth, and the growth together. Also, in that, your growth, what does that mean? How you're changing in your ways of showing up in relationships, showing up for yourself, being able to hold those spaces for others, making sure that you're also not like not losing yourself in the process.
Yeah.
If that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think I see what you're trying to say. That one's kind of tough, because the process of awakening itself, when it deepens, and I mean gets really deep, the person you think you are will start to fade completely. And so your loved one is still looking at you, or your loved ones are still looking at you like dad or mom or partner or whatever role you play in the family. But as you're shedding your ego, the role goes with it, you know? And so getting lost is sometimes, almost certainly, well, I shouldn't say sometimes, but almost certainly what will happen.
So not getting lost off of the trajectory of your path.
Right. Like it's
not staying
not stagnant in the relationship when it's clearly going, you know, and that's the challenge to having these conversations, is that, again, if one party is awakening and the other one is not, and the other one has no interest, and they don't know how to hold neutral space, nor do they want to try, there's almost no chance that it will work. Although most of us will try to hang on to it. I tried to hang on to it. I said, no, not me. You know, I'm smart. I'm somebody that can get things done. Like, I'll figure this awakening out, which is a joke, and then it'll be okay, right? I'll find a way to reconnect. But it's just the dichotomy between the person you were and the person, or the beingness that's starting to shine through you, is huge. Yeah.
So since we've been together, we're really pretty good about moving forward together. Like that's really one of the things when we first got together, unintentionally or however, is that we committed to each other, but we're committing to our individual growth. Yes. Together, but separate.
Right. Work on ourselves, but also work on what we can do as a team to further our growth. And so our levels of communication are extreme. You know, we have check-ins constantly, right? When we wake up in the morning, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel physically? How do you feel mentally? How do you feel energetically, right? Like we address this stuff. We address it before we go to bed at night and throughout the day. It's to the point, though, where we recognize, I mean, I can recognize energetically when I need to speak to, or when we need to talk, and you can too. You're like, hey, what's going on right now?
Yeah, we're really sensitive.
Yeah,
with each other.
we're both very sensitive to it. But that's kind of the beauty of the process, is that you become very sensitive to what's going on with your partner, and you can experience deep compassion for where they're at and allow them to space to go through it on their own, or you can get involved and make light suggestions, right? If you're in a space to be able to do that. This brings up what you and I went through just the other day with something you were going through, right? Do you want to kind of define what that looked like for you?
I don't really remember.
Okay.
Just talk a little bit and I'll remember.
So something you were going through the other day, you were having this old pattern start to arise where there was this victim kind of card that you started playing, right? And it was something to the effect of like, I'm sorry, I'm being upset, and I'm sorry that you're mad at me, or something like that. Because you're searching for me to say like, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I don't want you to feel it. I don't want you to feel right. So you're looking for me to apologize to you, even though you were the one snapping at me.
I think I wanted to make you feel bad.
You wanted to make me feel bad,
but I don't even know why. But
it's okay.
Why was all that?
We're not hanging on to a past, so it's kind of irrelevant. You were just having. I remember it. You were having kind of a rough go of it, and for whatever reason, the story started to unfold and you started clinging to it. I remember watching it happen and I'm like, oh no, here we go, and you just kept leaning more into the story, which is fine. You can be the story if you want. It's just suffering. And
I had a little temper tantrum.
You had a little temper tantrum, and then you were basically saying like, it's Brad, I don't, it's your fault that I had the temper tantrum kind of thing. You need to apologize to me. And so I pointed out that I even said that I was like, this kind of feels like that victim card. I'm like, can you see the pattern? But you have to do that really gently, because if I'm like, this is a pattern, you're wrong, you're trapped in your story, that's only going to push you further into the story.
And also it's you coming at it from that perspective is also playing that role of pushing.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so you don't want to push anybody into their awakening's their awakening. You quite frankly really can't push. I mean, you can try, but it's not usually useful. So in our case, like I just tried to point out to you, like just lightly, like, hey, is this a pattern? Has this occurred before? Have you seen this before? Right? Are you in the story right now? And at a certain point, it was a breaking point. You were like, I am in the story. And then poof, just like smoke, just like mine, you let it go. But the difference was that I was engaged in yours, where you were holding neutral space for mine to unfold. So they're drastically different approaches, and they both work. There's a lot of different options in between. But if you are going to be suggestive, and this can work even if, like we talk about where we're at on the path, this can work both ways. Right. You still have the ability to suggest to me like, hey, are you caught in your story?
Yeah, I will tell you there's some reasons why I don't engage, because there's like that little monster inside that wants to be like, ha ha ha. Look at him.
Yeah. Look at him
having
squirm.
A hard time.
Look at him squirm.
Yeah. And so there's reasons why I don't engage, is because, and if I did sometimes, then that's what wants to engage, and I don't want to feed that.
Well, that'll also invoke your story.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to do a pretty deep self check-in, especially if you're going to do the engagement part of it, right? Like, am I neutral in saying this? Right? Am I completely neutral in saying the thing that I'm going to say?
Yeah.
Is this a crystal clear neutral suggestion, or am I poking the bear? Right? Am I poking the bear because I can? Can I ramp this up? Because everybody's got that little thing in them, right? One of the things that you have in you, which I love, and it's hilarious to watch, is like this little pit bull that it just like it wants to be let off the chain sometimes. And I think it's so cute to see. But we point things out to each other. We do a good job, right? I think we do a great job of staying in a high state of consciousness, regardless of if we are in our story or not. If the story is going to be there, but as it starts to run off the rails and get, downhill off the rails, like this thing's going crazy, that's when we start, okay, how can I help? Do you need help? Is this something where you need space? Do you just need like actual physical space to work through this on your own? Do you just need me to hold space while I'm here and be neutral in the space that you're in? Or would suggestion be helpful?
And it absolutely like prevents and saves us from like almost like boxing each other, because if we didn't do that in like 5 minutes from those situations,
it would be a fight.
Complete fight.
Yeah.
And I've even experienced mentally, like in my head, the thoughts of we haven't really had a real fight, but in the moments of like some of the more intense conversations,
you can feel it come up, right?
that could totally go. I feel it, and it's like, you don't want to be with him. You don't want to be with him. Right. Just break up with him. And I'm like, what is going on?
The patterns.
I feel it trying to come out, and so bad. And it's like we've never even faced, like, those things have never come to the surface. Right,
because we notice them, right? Again, when you feel that coming up inside, and like, so my former life, I was a salesperson, right? And I was a closer for software companies. And so my job was to literally win at all costs. Like, that's what I got paid for, to win. Like, you don't not win. And so I experience the same thing sometimes when we're having any level of disagreement. You know, sometimes it's like, win. Like, right? Like, this thing inside is like, no, win, right? There's no concession, win. And, but it's the experience of that and the recognition that that's an old pattern, and then to watch the pattern flow through you, as opposed to getting hung up in it and then saying or doing something that you can't unsay or you can't undo. So I agree, like the fact that we are in a conscious relationship, not only beautiful, but our ability to share this with others so that they can use it to their advantage, because you can be in relationship with a partner, like an intimate partner, or your friends and family. Like, I have friends that are super asleep, you know, and some of them are great dance partners. You know, they're fun to play around in this game of life with, but you have to recognize where their limits are, right? And not push them too far.
Yeah. It's like takes practice to get to that point.
Right.
Because at the beginning, it'll be too much chaos almost.
It is total chaos. And I've experienced that with my friends when I initially awakened. Like, I'm like, oh, you guys got to try meditation and breath work and do this breath work with me. Because it feels so beautiful. It feels so wonderful, so free, that you want to share it with everybody you know.
Yeah.
But you're kind of the pain in the ass person in their life now. Right. And so, yeah, you have to be, it's a delicate dance, but it can be done. You know, and so you start to walk the walk with grace, you know, and you start to recognize your own patterns for what they are and stop giving in to them. And when you're in a relationship, we all know that if you're in any intimate relationship, that person knows where your hot buttons are more than anyone else. And they know how to just boop, boop, boop. And sometimes it can just be like, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. But that's the difference between what I think we're attempting to do through a conscious relationship. So it's not that we're the only ones doing it. I mean, millions of people have done this, if not more, and continue to do it now. But it's few and far between in society, because society tells us that, you know, we need to beat the Joneses, right? That your role and your position in society are most important. The amount of money and things that you have are the most important. And that's what defines who you are. But that's not true. And if you can get out of those societal patterns and that conditioning that most of us were brought up with, you can then enter into an intimate relationship with an open heart and the ability to become very neutral in those spaces that require it, you know, or suggestive in those spaces that require it, without pushing anyone to extremes, right? And yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean, we may at some point have a real 3D world argument. I don't know how it could happen, because we do such a good job of going, oh, this is a pattern. I recognize it. Hey, I need to describe this to you, you know, and together we work up kind of a strategy. Like, maybe I need alone time. Maybe I don't. Maybe I need you here with me, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. And it's getting easier too.
Yeah, it gets easier, right? It's kind of, at first it's kind of rough, because some of it stings.
Yeah. Well, and it feels awkward because we're not used to doing that.
Yeah, you're not used to expressing yourself.
Yeah, and then like putting yourself out there feels uncomfortable, and then the structure of the conversations as you're learning how to do it is like
clunky.
Yeah,
it's a little bumpy. Yeah, you're like, oh, is this weird now? Right? Is this weird now? But it's good. At the end of the day, it's worth it, right? I mean, would you say it's worth it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the juice is worth a squeeze for sure.
Thanks for joining us on Awakening and Relating.
Please like, share, and subscribe.
See you next week.